You are absolutely correct that the Wisconsin Constitution does contain a recognition of slavery to this day. It's in some ways it's not a big deal, but I can understand in other ways the symbolic importance of individuals who want to remove any reference to slavery from the Constitution. What the Constitution says is that the institution of slavery shall not exist except in cases of persons who've been convicted of a crime. Now, this does not mean that a judge can sentence someone to being a slave. That's not what it means at all. But what it means is that if you are imprisoned and you are forced to do labor in the course of your imprisonment, then you can't claim that you are enslaved and being forced into slave labor in violation of the constitutional ban on slavery. So it creates this exception for people who are imprisoned. And at the time, 1848, when the Wisconsin Constitution and the subsequent 13th Amendment in the 1870s, when these provisions were put in place, it was still thought that forced labor was a means of rehabilitating prisoners. And so through hard work, people who had criminal inclinations might be reformed. We no longer believe that. And in fact, today, prisoners are often given work opportunities or even sometimes called to engage in labor, but for minimal amounts of money. It's not at no cost, below minimum wage, some minor compensation. So what people are saying in some states is, look, we shouldn't recognize any slavery. We shouldn't permit any sort of forced labor to exist. And in fact, there's great symbolic importance in eliminating the entire concept of slavery from the Constitution. And so I can understand their point of view as well. So to circle around to where I started, it's not a big deal in my opinion, but it does have symbolic importance to eliminate the idea. The process for amending our Constitution is straightforward. It's not easy. Language has to be passed and approved by the state legislature, not just once, but in 2 consecutive sessions. And then that language has to be approved by a majority of the population in a vote. And we just amended the Wisconsin Constitution this last spring election when the so-called Marsy's Law, dealing with the rights of victims of crime, was added to the Constitution. So that's an example of the process going forward. And so if you wanted to remove any reference of slavery being permitted, that's what it would require. Language rewriting that provision of the Wisconsin Constitution being passed in 2 successive state legislative sessions and then being put to a vote of the people and approved by a majority. I think in general, there have been some arguments, some legal challenges brought concerning mandatory requirements being akin to slavery and therefore unconstitutional. I know in the case of lawyers, jurisdictions that require lawyers to give certain number of hours of free legal services to the public, what we call pro bono, have sometimes been challenged as a form of slavery, enforced labor. But when it comes to lawsuits by prisoners, people who are incarcerated, there have been some lawsuits, but typically courts have upheld the treatment of prisoners. What actually I predict would be if we did eliminate the current language, which created the possibility of forced labor for prisoners, if we eliminated it, then I actually think we'd see more lawsuits by prisoners challenging what they were forced to do while incarcerated. So it actually eliminating the constitutional provision might lead to more litigation, not less. Now, constitutions, a state constitution or the federal constitution, they are our foundational documents. They really are a statement of the bedrock principles on which a society is founded. And so I really understand the impetus to eliminate any sort of language in that foundational document in Wisconsin that might be construed as accepting or condoning slavery as an institution for anyone. So I understand the symbolic power of wanting to eliminate it.